So fun.
Well, welcome everybody to Monday Night Live.
Woo-hoo!
Dean Nixon, Kate Semmens, Turning Leaf. We are so excited to be with you on this Monday night.
Yes, it's crazy as the weather continues to winter. It's already dark outside.
It's already dark. It cracks me
outside.
up as you watch the videos. If you go back and you look at our videos from a year ago, it was dark. And then it got light, and now it's dark again.
Yep.
It's just crazy how the seasons change, and it's so noticeable. Anyway, and also the beard. The beard, holy cow, last year was...
Who knows when it's going to start not getting trimmed.
Yeah, it's getting trimmed. I just trimmed it.
Okay.
So excited to be with you guys tonight. As always, we are bantering and going back and forth.
Giving people some time to get on.
Oh, okay.
That's what we do.
There's that. Well, tonight we wanted to jump into a topic that really is one that is so important. Now, last week we really had a good, fun topic.
Yeah.
And I loved it. And hopefully all of you took the challenge. And I'll extend the same challenge for this topic for tonight is please take these topics beyond the videos and watch them and talk about them wherever you are. Talk about the dinner table, talk around the breakfast table, talk at work, the water cooler.
We did not plan.
We did not plan that. But wherever you can, because we need to be talking. That's one of the things. But tonight's topic is
a parenting skill and tip. Well, conversation that we're going to have, right? Yeah. Before we jump into the parenting thing, though, I just wanted to give a shout out to everybody that came to our stress and anxiety workshop.
That's right.
Because it was amazing. It was so great. We had such wonderful people there, and all of your guys' comments and participation was so fun. I know I learned a ton. So, and I was there the first time we did it. So it gets better and better. So if you missed out this time, don't worry. We're going to be doing it again. Probably it's a topic that we as humans, we really struggle with often.
It's going to
so
come
it's
around.
A good review.
Yes. Yeah. And especially those that may have missed it. Looks like Emily down on Instagram was saying that she missed it. We will have it coming back around. And it is such an important topic for us to be working on, to learn how to cope with stress and anxiety and to be able to learn some of those pieces. And again, I don't want to spend too much time because that was the workshop, but tonight's
a shout out,
topic,
thank you. And and honestly, we've been hanging out with stress and anxiety. I think this is maybe our fourth video about it, because the topic that we have tonight about parenting is one that brings up a lot of stress and anxiety for parents.
Very true.
Absolutely.
True.
And so let me just kind of set you guys up with how we kind of came across this. So I have another job where I help parents manage difficult times of crisis with kids. So I see lots of different types of parenting, lots of different types of kids, lots of different types of parents, have friends and family members with children and our parents and all that kind of jazz, right? And so I get to see a lot of different styles. And something that's really interesting that I was talking to Dean about, and we're like, oh, let's take this live, is that period of time in your teenager's life when so I'm talking like 15, 16, depending on the maturity of your kid, right? Everyone raises and matures a little different, but depending on that, where they really do need to start figuring out the world on their own at this point, right? Yeah. And so as a parent, that's a really difficult transition. And I see parents who, with children at 16, 17, hitting that borderline 18, 19 range, that are still really holding on to them like they're 7-year-olds, when their kids are just trying to spread their wings and fly, right? And so that is I think that's a hard thing oftentimes for parents to manage. And so that's kind of what we wanted to talk about with you guys, is how do we, as the adult, allow our children to figure their own stuff out?
Yeah. Well, and I think and I loved it when Kate brought the topic to the discussion, because this is an issue that we're really struggling with right now. Is we really live, this is a time in our world, not just let alone in America, in our world, this is a time where we are the most safe generation of all times. We've never been more safe. But yet, if you survey everybody, we feel the most unsafe out of all the generations in the past. And I know that they put a statistic out about that. Boy, I just stumbled through that.
That was hard syllables all in a row.
A lot of syllables.
You did good.
And so but this is really affecting us. So as parents, there's a lot of fear around raising our children. And there's a lot of consequences that are constantly coming. And the consequences that our children face today are significantly different than the consequences I faced years,
or I faced,
or you faced
Absolutely.
Years ago. And of course, mine's way longer than yours.
Only a couple of years, Steve.
Yeah. Oh, you're too kind. Liar, but too kind. But the point being is that our children, a lot of times, it is about the safety as parents. We're feeling like we can't let our children go out and do. We feel like we have to monitor. We got the world that's showing us all sorts of fear-based imagery. The world's showing us all sorts of horrible things that are going on around the world. And so we ourselves feel like we're so scared to parent. We're so scared to let our kids go out and really go out and be a part of the world around. We become overprotective. And in a lot of ways, we're creating insecurity within our children.
Absolutely.
And so we're adding to the failure to launch issue that we've addressed so many times before.
Yes, absolutely. I love over here on Facebook, Angie says, great topic. I have a 19-year-old right now that I'm trying to help figure things out, but I don't know how to go about it the right way without overstepping. It really is. It's a balancing act.
Right. It is. And so what we really want to do is we want to empower, and that's the part that's important. We need to empower our children. So in other words, we need to be able to give them accountability the more that they start to become cognitively able and aware. So for example, if I have a 13 or 14-year-old, the last thing I'm going to do is give them a smartphone. I'm sorry, people. I may be very controversial.
I'm with you, Dean. I'd put it up to 16, 17 myself,
because
especially if it's a girl.
You have to understand, Kate and I come from a background of working with youth that are struggling. Come from that background. So we understand what our youth are really up against. So
I love it. Dean often, he calls it a loaded weapon.
It is. It's a gun. It's a loaded gun you're handing your kids. And so I wouldn't hand that, because they don't have the cognitive ability to reason and govern themselves on a smartphone. However, giving your 16-year-old a smartphone, now that's different, because they have the cognitive ability to be taught, to communicate, and to work through. So the first step is we have to recognize what is their cognitive ability. And as Kate put it so well, some children are more mature emotionally and mentally than others.
Yep, absolutely. And you're gonna be the best one to figure that out. I mean, they're your kid, right? So I love that we're talking about this piece of it, because there's that idea of, is my child ready for this? Right. And then the other piece of is, am I ready to give that to my child?
Right.
Yes.
Yes, and we feel so afraid to give these things to our children, but yet we're afraid not to give them because everybody else is doing it, or because we should, or what the world thinks. And the reality is and here's the thing, parents, it's nobody's business. It's nobody's business. It's only yours and your child's business. It doesn't matter what Aunt Wilma thinks. It doesn't matter what Grandma and Grandpa. It doesn't matter what your sister Jane thinks.
Or their best friend.
Or their best friends. Or their friends' parents. It doesn't matter. It's none of their business. What happens in your home is your business and your children's business. So we need to include our children in the solution. We need to include them in this conversation.
I love that.
And that's how we empower them, is through the conversation, through including them in the conversation.
Yes. And so that is another really perfect way for you to be able to gauge where they're at with that. Like, are they able to have this next layer of responsibility? Because you're communicating with them. Right. You're going to be asking them really great open-ended questions that is not just yes or no, like, hey, what do you think about this? Yeah, cool, whatevs, right? Like, oh, let's talk about this, and how do you feel about this?
Here's the second piece that's important.
Those really vague, topics of conversation. This,
very vague.
Jeez.
Point taken, though, right?
Enter in your favorite topic of conversation.
You get it. The next piece, the second piece that we have to recognize is, as parents, because it's a scary world to us, and because we're scared to say no to our children oftentimes, what winds up happening is we default to what everybody around us is doing, instead of stepping back and doing what we feel is right.
Can I jet in here really quick? Because the default is what we think that we observe that other people are doing. Maybe not even necessarily what's actually real.
We're assuming.
Right? Yeah. Because we don't know. We're not in their homes. We have no idea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so what we've got to do as parents is we've got to stop. And this is the piece. Number one, we have to stop our imagination from running wild, because our imagination creates these huge scenarios. We create these horrible scenarios of oh my gosh, they're going to be laying in a ditch. I remember that's all I ever heard growing up. You're going to wind up dead in a ditch. And it's like this worst case scenario, because here's where it's unhealthy, parents, is we take that worst case scenario and then we project it forward using what we call fear-based logic on our children. So then they don't want to talk to us about these things. They don't want to talk to us. They don't want to open up, because mom and dad are just going to tell me that this is going to happen to me. If I do this, this will happen to me. If I do this, this will happen to me. If I don't do this, then I won't get this, or I won't look like this, or I'll be this way. I mean, it's really, really unhealthy, because we as parents are taking our fears and projecting them out there as truth, as this is what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And because of it, our children aren't encouraged to go out. They're not empowered. So instead of saying, well, if you go do that, what if there's drugs at the party? Are there going to be drugs there? You know, I don't want you coming home drunk. I don't want you coming back high. Now, what you've done is you've taken your fear and you've lumped it on your child. Number one, you've offended the crap out of them. And number two, they're like, well, I wasn't thinking about doing it, but maybe I should, because you think I'm going to be doing it anyway. But instead, we need to be able to say, hey, are you going to be safe? And if you're in need of help, or if you need me to be engaged, how do you want me to do that? How do you want me to be involved in this situation? And we start to include them in the solution. It's significantly different than projecting the fear.
Absolutely. Because when you project, really all you're doing is you're going to get either a super rebellious child or super fearful and non-resilient, right? So they'll just hang out in your basement until that gets too uncomfortable, like in your 30s and you're trying to date and you're living in your parents' basement and it's a struggle,
happens.
Right?
It happens.
No, seriously, those are the outcomes.
Yeah, it does. It does happen. And it's hard, because I'm not laughing about the 30 in your basement. I'm laughing at the trying to date part. I think that would be super awkward. Yeah, so I just don't know.
I don't live in my dad's basement anymore, but it's still awkward. That 30-something dating life.
That 30-something dating life, yeah. So, but the point being is it is important for us to make sure that we're including the children in the conversation. And so to helping, Angie is, when she's saying, I don't know how to do it the right way without overstepping. Number one, if the child is 19, then they are technically
an adult.
So anything you do may feel like overstepping unless it has to do with living in your home. When it comes to living in your home, any conversation you engage them in is not overstepping, it's clarifying. And quite honestly, the child in the home probably is tired of walking on eggshells. So be able to have a conversation of, hey, how can I help you move forward? Do not say this, parents. What's your plan?
Yeah. What are you going to do with your life?
What's your plan? What's your plan? What are you doing? What's your plan? Don't do that. Just go in and say, hey, look, I know you want to move out on your own. I know you want to get moving forward. How can I help you? What can we do to create movement for you? And also when it comes to boundaries in your home, if they're 19, living at home, you don't want them coming home at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the night. That's not okay. So you want to start creating boundaries and agreements around that. Unfortunately, we don't have enough time tonight to go into all of that, but you're more than welcome to come to the value-based parenting workshop.
Oh, see, look, Emily said that right at the bottom. Do you teach about these things in your parenting workshop? Yes. Ma'am.
Yes, we do.
And so many more.
So please make sure you come to the workshop, and that is
in November. It's like the week.
It's in November. I can't remember the day. But yes, we have one.
I just looked at it.
We did. And so we do have a parenting workshop coming up in November where we can elaborate more on.
It's the weekend before Thanksgiving. So it's like the 22nd.
Okay. So that's the best way to teach you the best way to set boundaries with your children, how to set boundaries with your children, when to set boundaries with your children, but also how to create a very powerful, empowering environment.
Absolutely.
So, like I said, I wish we had enough time to go into it tonight.
And really, communication is the key, right? The more you're talking with your kid, the more you know where they're at as far as being able to handle different privileges or whatever you want to call them, right? And then, and where maybe they are going to need a little bit more help to be able to get to that place where they can handle those kinds of things. I love how you were saying that oftentimes we look around us for how we should be governing ourselves, and that like kind of doomsday prepping idea, because let's just like not even be pretending about the fact that what we're seeing in our media isn't always reality either.
Right.
So if you're seeing a bunch of like scary stuff on the news, guess what? That sells. They get people to watch because they do that.
Right.
It's not because that's actually super rampant in our communities.
Right.
Right. It might just be a very narrow perspective, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I can't let my children do these things, or how on earth would I be able to give them more freedom to explore how to become an adult when there's all these things that I see on the news, right, or see in my social media spread or whatever it is. Like, kind of really take a step back and figure out what really is real.
And I think one of the better things to do with it as well is to engage your children in that conversation.
Absolutely.
You know, what do you see going on in your school? And if you're confused, then call the school and ask the counselors, engage the educators to say what's going on in those schools. So to say that there aren't drugs going on in your school is naive.
Super naive.
Say that there's not a crime going on in your school is naive. But to say that there's something huge dynamic going on, that there's some syndicate running in your school or all those things going on, that's a little, that's how it feels. Right. As a parent, we become very, very scared. I know that one of the things that we talked about in the past, which is the sex trafficking that's going on in our world and in our communities. And that is a real thing. And one of the greatest ways for them to have access to our children is through social media, through what I call the glass window. And that's another reason why I encourage you as a parent to not give your child a smartphone until they're over 16 years of age, because it's important. But just because those things are happening in our community doesn't mean it's going to happen to your children.
Right.
The best way to protect your children from those things, communicate.
Yes.
Talk to your children. Engage them in conversations. Don't use fear-based logic like, oh, this is the best way for perpetrators to get a hold of you is on that phone. That's why we're not going to give it to you. No, you sit back and you say, hey, this is a potential issue and we're not comfortable giving you a phone right now. And you use a different language, which again, shameless plug, we can help you with at the workshop.
Yes, absolutely.
But it is important for us to engage our children in that conversation and engage them in finding solutions to it and creating agreements around it. One of the things that I think is important is to create agreements that you're working towards. So when you're talking to a child and you're saying, I'm not comfortable giving you a smartphone until you're about 16 years of age, then you open up a conversation where you say, so what do you think you need in order to prepare you for that cell phone? What are some things we need to be doing? You're 13 now, that's 3 years away. What are some check marks? What are some milestones that you can do to show that you're ready for that phone when you turn 16? So you turn it into empowerment instead of, no, we're not giving that to you till you're 16.
Because how cool to be a 14-year-old and hit one of those milestones.
Right.
And be like, yes, look at me, I'm progressing.
I remember
becoming.
One of the frustrations I had as a kid with my parents, like, you don't date till you're 16. Why? Because that's just the rule. Well, that makes no sense to me, because. But had my parents sat down with me and said, hey, really, dating is about finding your mate, to find who you're going to marry. So are you going to be ready to marry at 16? No. Well, that's why you start dating. So what are some things you need to do to prepare yourself for dating? That's a better conversation than you don't get a date till you're 16. Right. because.
End of story.
End of story.
Right, absolutely. Over here on Facebook, Jamie, hey Jamie girl, says, something that is helping me is also realizing that me worrying isn't a sign of due diligence as a mother. More communication, less worry, and trusting my kids' adversities are teaching moments for them. Absolutely.
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 Well, we are out of time once again. As always, it goes so quick.
So fast.
Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. Please like and share our videos. Make sure that they're getting around, especially these topics that are so timely and important. And people need them.
Yep.
Sarah, thank you. I'm glad you love this topic. Thank you, Moira, for jumping in over here on the other feed. We have so many people commenting and watching and liking. Please continue to do that. Most importantly, take that challenge. Take this home. Talk about it at the dinner table. Talk about it at work. Talk about it on the bus.
Talk to your kids.
Yes, you guys are awesome. Talk to your kids. We are grateful.
Yes, so grateful. We love you guys.
So thank you for tuning in to Monday Night Live. We look forward to seeing you
next week.
Good
night.
Get this upper one.
Perfect.